Welcome. Ketavach Shavua Tov to Tanya. Today, Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We welcome Clem. Good night. After this, imagine you have a good night's sleep, I hope. All the way in Australia. On June, also in Australia, welcome. Abby, welcome. And Anna in New York is with us. Margaluzata in Poland. Oh, welcome back. Thank you. Tim in Texas is with us. Heather in Connecticut. Joe, shalom to you. Adine in, remind me. John in North Carolina is with us. Joe in Washington. Prayers, thank you. Davida and Liba are with us in New York. Good to vach. Eugenia in Calgary. Shavua Tov. Katie in Texas, welcome. Sar is with us in Malaysia. Samita, hello. Pamela in Virginia. Good morning, Russ. In Boca, welcome. Where the sun must be shining. We have with us Clubhouse, Batya, David, Andrea, Adam, Tim, Liana, and Boss. Instagram, we have Sharon with us from the Caribbean. All right. Adam and so I can't make out some of the names. Shiach now. Mama Cook. All right. Very nice. Akoy in Peru and a few others. I can't make out the names. But it's great to have you all. Good to vach. Mark in the middle of the ocean. Amazing. We begin the seventh essay and conclude it today, quoting a verse from Amos, from Tanakh. It says, charity is like a mighty river. The word might is eitan. So, eitan means vigor, means toughness and antiquity. Interesting. It refers to chokhmah. Chokhmah is the letter Yud in God's name. Which I don't have here. Well, we know the Yud, the Tetragrammaton, God's name, Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. So Chachma, the first of the divine attributes, Yud. So there's three components to the Yud. Give me 1 second so I can get it. All right. In the meantime, you got my nice background. So, letter Yud. There's three components to it. There's the tip on top that shoots up. There's the body of it. And then how it goes down. So where it comes from, the body of it, and where it's going into. Right? So where's it go into? Well, it comes from divine will, right, which is beyond it. It goes into bina, understanding. That's called, Kabbalistically, the point in its chamber. What's the chamber? Is the hay, is bina. It's like a chamber, and it's the point in it. In other words, bina means understanding, but it means an expansion. And if you look, the letter hey starts with a yud. See how the yud on top, the point, and then you have to write it this way. You don't write it from down up, but up down. So here you start from, right? It's starting with a yud because it's drawing out the yud. The yud is the point, the quintessential point, and it's being drawn out in a full breadth, length, and depth. Right? 3 dimensions there. So that's the point in the chamber, and the chamber, the expansion, always has to have the point in it. So in a sense, they're like two comrades that are inseparable. Because Chokhmah and Bina, Chokhmah without Bina, then you've got nothing. You've got a point without making a point, so to speak, right? It's like the flash of intuition, of ingenuity that comes to your head. That flash is the quintessential point, the seed. But if the seed is not planted to grow something, to create the home, so, it doesn't develop into anything. That's hay. That's bina. So, but yet, it always has to be on point. It always has to be expression of the quintessential point of Chokhmah. So the two are inseparable because Bina has to always be connected to where it's coming from, the point of Chokhmah. And Chokhmah needs Bina in order that it can have self-expression, that it can be fully developed. Right? So now, the letter that spells out in Hebrew the word Eitan indicates future tense. So, meaning that future tense, there will be the revelation of the point. Meaning, what's future tense? Well, what's future? Future is Mashiach. That's the future. It's the only future we got. Right? So, which means that point of Chokhmah is the first of the divine attributes. Why? Because it's the only thing that can be a vessel, can be a vehicle to contain the limitlessness of God. That's why the Yud is the smallest letter, can be expressed by literally, some people, when you write it, you just make a dot. Because a dot, is like, the point of infinity. Why? I mean, just physically, when you cut a dot in half, what are you left with? A dot. Cut it in half again, what are you left with? A dot. And ad infinitum, ultimately. It might be a very, very faint one, ultimately, but it brings, you get the point, right? So, that dot of the infinity that it represents, Chachma, that it now is housed in Bina, right? So that Bina, understanding, what happens when you have a real good understanding of something? Where does that express itself? In the innermost of your heart, right? In the innermost of your heart. Well, that's the mighty river that we're talking about over here, the mighty flow of supernal divine wisdom that illuminates the inwardness of our heart. And what does that do? That it reflects in the inwardness of our heart, that we become in our heart, in the depths of our heart, truly bound up and nullified to the divine. Bittul, completely nullified to the divine. Now, this can only happen after one has cleared away any obstruction to your heart, right? Because our heart, we're talking about touching the depths of your heart. How are you going to get to the depths of your heart if you have obstructions on the outside of your heart? Meaning, it's called an orla, a foreskin. Just like there's the foreskin on the male organ that needs to be circumcised, right? Revealing the godliness, the connection of that Jewish child to God, right? So likewise, metaphorically, there's a foreskin on our heart, meaning the outer layer of the heart that doesn't allow us to reach the inner depths of our heart. And we need to excise it. We need to remove it. Meaning that all the desires, the expectations we have in our heart, the lusts and things that drive us for our self-interest passions that are destructive ultimately, but whatever. We understand where we're going with that. That needs to be removed. And then when we do that, then you know what happens? God, He will remove that's the outer layer. And then the more refined things that need to be removed, God will do that for us. As it says in the verse, the Lord your God will circumcise your heart. And then there's nothing left in your heart but the innermost core. And at that innermost core, you don't feel yourself and your needs. You're not needy, right, at that point. But what then is expressed is a pure connection to God. Pure connection. Right? So that's the eitan of the soul, the vigor of the soul, the toughness of the soul, and that comes from the antiquity of the soul. As we mentioned, eitan has those three meanings, right? So in other words, there's a resolute vigor of the essence of the soul that reflects itself in the innermost part of our heart, that is an unswerving toughness, and it's connected to the antiquity of old. So the top of it, right, it's connected to something beyond it. That we are part of the Jewish people. And then there's a toughness that creates a vigor that it can go and draw down into, that's chokhmah, draw down into our understanding of our minds, that leads then to the inner depths of our heart. And what do we experience? A profound, deep connection with God. Not what not what we are needy of, but what we're needed. And what are we needed? To connect to God. God needs that. God wants that. Our innermost soul wants that. That will be truly experienced in the times of Mashiach. That's when the true, real experience of that will occur. That being said, we have now also the capacity in some glimmer of that to have that illumination of the state of Eitan, the power, the gushing power of our soul, the innermost point of our heart. We can attain some of it now. How? How can we be so nullified to the divine unity that is in our heart? Well, you know how? If we have compassion on that part in us to begin with. To recognize that we have that. We have that capacity within us. And to have compassion of that spark that is in exile, that it needs to be illuminated. And we can illuminate it now, taking it out of its imprisonment. And how's that? When we show compassion, just as God needs to show the supreme mercy upon us to bring us out of that personal exile, to illuminate the inner core of our being, which is the idea of Jacob redeeming Abraham. Jacob, who's the embodiment of compassion, of divine mercy, redeems Abraham, who is the embodiment of love. Not always can we have the love of God, of that innermost level, to experience the glimmer of it today. But if we have compassion over that part in me, that can redeem that inner love, as Jacob redeems Abraham. And how do you then, okay, so you have the compassion, but then you need to express the compassion, not just the compassion that you have of that part of my neshama that's reflecting the inner core of my heart, that is just naturally bound and one with God, and now express that. But the way I can arouse that God should have the compassion to redeem that in me, is when I have compassion, not just over that part in me, but I have a compassion over another. And I actually give of my gold, my silver, my things. I give tzedakah in a way that's a flow of a mighty river. That I get, meaning, what does that mean? That I give beyond my comfort zone. I give not just to fulfill, the mitzvah, but I give skin for skin. Meaning, just like a person would give all their money away to bring healing for their physical well-being, so likewise over here for our spiritual well-being, that you're giving like a mighty river that flows strongly. You're giving in such a manner, such a divine flow, and that will illuminates the light of life, the infinite of God will illuminate us as a result. Powerful, very powerful idea over here about charity, tzedakah, to give in such a manner that, think about it, that's like, wow, and that allows me to touch the inner core of my being. Because think about it for a moment, and we're talking about giving charity, not, it's not nickel and dime type of thing, but also giving with that mighty strength of that flowing river that flows in us, of the soul that gives. Think about it for a moment. We said about the outer layer of the heart needs to be circumcised, because the outer layer of the heart is only thinking about me. What's good for me? What what benefits me. That's what the outer layer of the heart is all about. The inner layer of the heart is nothing about me, just about divine connection. And of course, that divine connection is expressed over here by connecting to others and giving. And giving. So that act of giving in such a way is that mighty river that pushes away all the outer layers of the heart, excises it, circumcises it, that I'm not self-directed or caring for my needs, caring for the needs of others. Now, of course, here is speaking about literally, tzedakah, giving money, but this is also expressed in just the idea of giving to another. Giving, right? Again, the exterior part of my heart that needs to be circumcised is that I'm thinking about my needs, what I can have, if I can have more of, it's going to make me feel good, comfortable, enjoyable. And that is not touching the inner core. So tzedakah allows us, and tzedakah here, again, it means literally money, but it also the idea, the concept over here is about, you're not thinking about you and your benefit. You have compassion for another and give them what they need. Might be a good word. It might be, some Torah wisdom to have compassion and think about and you caring about the other. That's touching the inner core of our being and allowing us to touch the divine within me. That's the Yud in the home, the quintessential point of divine connection that Yud embraces or embodies and is a vessel for the Ein Sof, for God, and then brought into my comprehension of understanding, that understanding then produces in the inner heart a true feeling, connection to God. That connection is that it's not about me, it's about the connection. And how is that expressed? How do I arouse and get that to be expressed, that connection in my heart, that God brings it to the inner core? Is because I give unstintingly. I give eitan, power, with vigor, to another in need. Whew.